I have been at the forefront of conflict reporting for years in the northern region as the regional correspondent. Though I have reported on these local conflicts, it does not necessarily give me any detailed knowledge about genocide, massacre, and Holocaust. I specialize in conflict and risk reporting with emphasis on the against humanity locally and globally. Hate countries into civil conflict and wars. Traditional media and the rise of social media have contributed to these mass killings in some African countries. Sierra Leone, Liberia, and others are quick examples. Media agitations and uncontrolled political and social rhetoric point to the direction of such possibilities in Ghana. The Montier 3 comments on radio quickly comes to mind.
We are waiting for what they will say. Because one person who acquire or no better cleaning. Since when will Supreme?
Some political party communicators have engaged in speeches that have resulted in brawls.
Speak to them. Hey.
Rwanda offers a classic example of how the media can throw a country into conflict. I set out to explore opportunities in conflict studies. The East African Regional Convening on Good Governance and Accountability under the Mandela Washington Fellowship in Rwanda was a perfect chance to deepen my knowledge on conflict studies. 4 weeks later, I arrived in Rwanda. With the help of the Rwanda Broadcasting Agency, a survivor of Rwandan Genocide was willing to share his experience. It is a Saturday morning and I'm traveling to Intarama to meet Serge Gasori. Serge, 33 years, was born in Gashora in eastern province of Rwanda, a country that occupies 10,169 square miles of the landmass of the earth. It was first colonized in 18 Germans, but power was passed to the Belgians in 1919 after World War I. It currently has a population of about 11 million with 5 provinces and Kigali. Prior to the genocide, Rwanda was divided into 3 tribes. History showed that the colonial rulers developed policies that encouraged greater ethnic identification, which favored the Tutsi at the expense of the Hutus. Tensions had gradually built up when Rwanda gained independence from 1992. The Tutsi king was deposed by Hutu politicians in 1969, which deepened tension among Rwandans. With the Hutu government in power, violence against Tutsis increased. Anti-Tutsi articles and graphics began appearing in the Kangura newspaper in 1990. The Hutu 10 Commandments had categorically broken family ties between the Hutus and Tutsis, event that culminated in the April 1994 genocide. Soon a radio station was set up. This saw many Tutsi fleeing to neighboring countries. Serge, an only child, his parents moved to Kigali soon after he was born. His family again relocated to Intarama, approximately 30 kilometers south of Kigali, after Serge's first birthday. He recounts how to pass in class was a preserve of the Hutu majority. We began a journey through his past. In 10 minutes, we arrived at our destination. On this land stood Serge's grandmother's house, where he had lived. Serge remembers the day his neighbor returned home with a blood-stained machete and meat, but little did he know that the blood was a mixture of human and animal blood.
I remember waking up, I was probably thinking it was going to be like any typical day, because I remember going to look for water. We fetch water within 5 miles. It's not like we have water at home. So I'm thinking I'm going home to get water, come shower and go to school. But as soon as I left home, I met a guy. He said, no, the killing has started. And as a child, like I said, I don't know what's going on by that time. So I ran back home to my grandma. I said, Mom, Grandma, somebody told me that killing has started. And grandma looked at me and kind of like didn't say anything, because she knew. She didn't want to tell me the worst.
He did not anticipate the president's plane crash on the evening of April 6. Killing the president could set the tone for the beginning of manslaughter. As horrific as it may be, Serge still holds memories of the beginning of a dreadful era.
Before 1994, as I was growing up as a child, there were some tension and divisions among our neighborhood, our surrounding neighborhood, and even at our schools. Those divisions were actually leading us to the genocide against Tutsis, because the reign by that time with the Hutu majority was already planning to exterminate the race Tutsi. So I remember when it got too worse, it was when the plane of the president Habyarimana was shut down. It was in the evening at night, and then I was a child, stubborn. I knew Habyarimana was the person who abused my race for a long time, so I was among people who celebrated, but I was being a child, because when I was celebrating, my grandma, who I lived with, was already in panic, because she knew something worse was going to follow.
In the midst of fear, many would have thought the church would be a safe haven.
And immediately we started seeing people coming from that here, and other people coming from that here, others from there, and they were all running toward this way. And you know why? Because we have a Catholic church here. Catholic church has been used as a safe haven in the past. We were there with all our belongings. It's a church that can hold 200 people on any typical Sunday, but this time this church was crowded and had probably about 1,000 people inside and probably about 4,000 people outside. You can tell it was chaos, and everybody tried to take everything inside the church: milk, cups, cooking pots, everything is in there, with babies, with people, and even some people will try to sneak in goats. So you can tell how crowded it was and the chaos. But killers after they finished to kill people in houses, in homes, and people who were on the street, then their final destination was to be the church. They got there, and when they got there, we tried to resist. Some of our youth tried to resist, and people who were old enough to fight, they tried to resist, but it was hard, because how would you resist weapons with traditional weapons, guns against traditional weapons? So there we lost, and that's how they started entering inside the church. Those who came to attack had people who used to serve inside the church, different people in a Catholic in a church system. So I don't know, I think the evil had taken the country that time, had to understand. So I remember I was sitting by my grandma, and once they started attacking, shooting babies and killing people with machetes, my grandma said, let's move to the altar. So we moved to the altar, but as she was walking toward the altar, when she got close to it, a grenade came through the window and hit her. She busted in front of me.
For someone who had watched the brutal murder of his mother at age 4, watching his guardian die was too much of a bitter pill. With no guardian again, the former international athlete had just his legs left. For 100 days and 100 nights, families were separated. Staying alive the next second was not assured.
I got confused as a child. I had blood everywhere, even my ears, my eyes, and ran toward out. And since then, I never stopped running. So I ran, went to the bamboo bush, and the next morning I tried to come back to the church. The church was like a ghost. I can't describe it. A ghost town or something. There were dead bodies everywhere. You can hardly find a place to step. And from there, at the church, I can identify some of my family members, because after they killed them, the killers wanted to make it fun and stacked their bodies together. So they would take somebody's family and collect their bodies and stack them together just to make it worse for victims. So some people had been killed, and been under bodies, maybe like kids who were very young. So bodies fell on them, dead bodies fell on them. So that's how they escaped. And when you walk in, they hear your voice, they would call your name. So I remember we saved some people by putting them out of under bodies, dead bodies.
He says being spared his life even when he faced the shadows of death was a miracle.
My mom was among people who died in the first place, plus my grandmother. And then the person you see over there, Francois, was killed among last people. Rudachema Francois have been hacked to death, but didn't lose his speech. So I would walk by his body speaking, and he would always tell me, Serge, I'm probably gonna die, but I RPF in Hotanyi before I die. You know, RPF is the patriotic army that was fighting to stop the genocide, and that was his dream. Then he would tell me, if you don't die, make sure you be a man with dignity, with unity and love. And until now, I'm holding to what he told me. But unfortunately, as soon as the first RPF army walked in, he died. Sam Habatanaz died in the middle of the genocide against Tutsi. He was killed in a very unhuman way, because they would cut him into pieces every day. They were close by him because he was shot. And at the very beginning, when he was shot, we decided not to run with him every day. We decided to hide him in one of the houses by the road. And killers discovered him. Once they discovered him, every time they passed by, they would pass to his hidden place and cut him. One day they'll cut his ear, the other day they'll come and cut his arm, the other day they'll come and cut half his mouth until he was finished.
Okay, so when the Rwanda Patriotic Front finally took over Rwanda and then the whole genocide ended, after the 100th day, where were you?
I was in the bamboo bush, in a swamp, and surrounded by dead bodies. And we heard somebody saying, "You guys come out. We are here to save you. We've already been able to save some people. You are the next to be saved." And immediately we kind of got into a denial moment, and like, who's this person coming to save us? Maybe he's trying to trick us so we can all be killed easily. So we kind of resisted, but I was among few people who ran toward him to verify if that was the really person.
When you couldn't trust him, you still ran towards him. What came over you?
We just had no more hope. So we thought maybe, whether you go there or you stay where you are, you knew you won't make the next second. Once we got there, some of us recognized that he was not a killer. That's when we went back, got everybody, and said, I think it's time now for us to be saved.
Becoming a child soldier with the Rwandan Patriotic Front was the best option when the dust had settled.
So then from there, life became a struggle again, because I was trying to get in school, better myself. Everybody here in this country, among 10 people, maybe 9 of them had no mom or dad. So you wouldn't be the one to stand up and say, I don't have tuition. I don't have anything to eat. It was a daily struggle every day. And until I finished primary school, finished high school, and when I was in high school, I discovered that I was good at running. And I decided to chase that talent. And that's how I became a runner. I joined the national team, running 10K and 5K. When I finished my high school, then I was given a scholarship in the United States to go and study and also run for them in return.
For Serge, it was either he stayed in a foreign country, enjoyed his freedom, or returned to rebuild his country. He opted for the latter.
After surviving the genocide against Tutsi, there are so many things I did to better myself. And one of them was to get education. The other thing was to find out my talents. And once I realized I had something, I happened to see so many people here in Rwanda or heard in Rwanda who had survived but went to fight to stop the genocide. I happened to listen to so many of the speeches of His Excellency Paul Kagame, talking about his journey, and then I realized, what is my contribution? Do I need to sit down, fold my arms and say life is good, or do I need to look back where I come from in my community? Because I think we ought to go back and embrace other people from our community once we've been embraced.
He has chronicled his past in a book titled
My Day to Die Running for My Life. That is the title. Why did you decide to give this book that title?
It's because the genocide, when the genocide against Tutsi started in 1994, I can remember I started running from the first day. And if you would have asked me why I was running, I would say I was running to save my life.
With support from his wife and some individuals, Serge rewrote the history of the once dreadful place with a message of hope.
This area where we are standing, where this campus is where the killers would gather after killing people all day to celebrate and eat cows and goats they've taken from victims. So the fact that this place is where people come for spiritual healing, they come for medical treatment, they come for running businesses, they come for school where their kids are protected, they are in a safe hands. It's among those reasons.
The home is an edifice that continues to restore the many lost hopes.
And I realized after a while that I need to be the one going back and serve those kids who might be growing the way I grew up.
But who qualifies to be enrolled in the Rwandan Christian Children Home?
Yes.
Is this place for the rich or is for the vulnerable? The school itself.
This school was put here to serve the most vulnerable families. We have students who comes here every day. I'll call those our students. But we also have other kids from the community who goes to different schools. You saw them in one of the classroom. They come over here for coaching. We realized that when they have coaching, they also do well in national exam.
The center plays host to many African historical books as well.
We have not only for the genocide against Tutsi books. We also have books about our culture, our values, books that reminds us that we are Rwandans, and there are things that make us different.
Serge believes a healthy home makes a healthy family.
When we started to serve children who are vulnerable, who are at risk, we realized that it's not always children are at risk because their parents are poor. We realize sometimes children are at risk because their parents don't understand what it takes to be a parent. We realized there were some conflicts, and immediately we started this house. And this house was to come in and serve as a family transformation home. We would take a husband and a wife who are going through some trouble at home, and we bring them here for intensive counseling. That immediately requires to have counseling department. So that's another program behind family transformation. Once parents are here for counseling, we are observing them. We are teaching them about microfinance, about saving, about conflict resolution. We are also teaching them some other skills.
For his spirit of rebuilding lives, Serge has been awarded by the government.
That's when I built the smallest home, which was for the kids. and that time I took in 3 kids. After a few months I took 7 kids. After I had 7 kids, that's when the Rwandan shut down. Rwanda decided to move from orphanage homes to ECD. That's when I said, okay, now let's switch from being an orphanage to ECD, a childhood development.
Serge finds joy restoring homes.
So we also have youth outreach programs. We realized that you can protect a child that is abused when he's 2 years old, 7 years old, until he's 12, but you can't let him go or her, because when you let him go or her after 18 years old, you will meet that child using drugs or maybe pregnant. So what we decided to do, we decided to partner with surrounding schools and create clubs, different clubs, so that way we have access to those kids who are between 12 years old and 18, even if they don't come over here, but we can access them.
To sustain the home, Serge has plans.
We are very careful about how we manage our resources.